And I'm sharing my screen, so hopefully, if you could just let me know that you could see that, that would be great as well. Just drop me a. You can either drop a quick yes into the chat, or there is a thumbs up. I don't know if you've seen that on the toolbar. You have, if you hit more, you have reactions. Oh, Samantha, yes, thank you, Samantha, appreciate it. But you can hit reactions if you want to throughout today as well. As we go through this session today, if there's things that come up for you, if there's questions, or if there are insights or comments that you want to make, just put them in the chat. Thank you, Abid, as well. Just put them in the chat and I'll make sure that we cover them as we go through the session. We've got a couple of things going on that hopefully make today's session interactive for you. So this lunchtime is all about giving you some thinking space, really thinking about you as a leader within your business, and sharing some principles that are going to be really useful as you go back into your business this afternoon and for the rest of this week and beyond, of course. So it's about giving you some thinking space, but also I'd like you to think about what will you do with what we cover today. So there'll be some really practical advice today, and I'm hoping it'll give you some things that you can actually implement within your businesses after today's session. And really what we're looking at today is about how we agree standards and boundaries with your team. And we'll talk about why that's important shortly, why it's important that we do that, and then how do we use an approach that is kind of founded in business coaching called contracting. How do we contract with individuals in our team? And then if we want to do that at a team level rather than just the individual level, how do we build or create a team contract that really starts to set the stage for high performance in our businesses? And that is, it's really useful when you get these principles in place. Having done this multiple times, not only in my own businesses, but in businesses that I work with as clients, it really does make a shift in your leadership, in the engagement of your teams, and then the performance that follows from there. So hopefully you'll find this as useful today as I've found it in the past. And if you haven't spent a lot of time with me before, it's probably worth me just giving you a quick introduction. So you'll know by now I'm Justin Lee. My background is in sales, leadership, business management, and then coaching. So lots of experience of working in businesses with teams, with business leaders, and then the last 5 years in my own business, coaching and really supporting business leaders to kind of step into leadership and helping their teams with kind of influencing and communication skills, which has been really useful. And what I've found personally is that over time we can find that our teams start to drift in terms of performance. They start to drift in terms of potential. And what we try and do is kind of give people some guidance and direction, so they move from kind of this inconsistency and sometimes negativity to higher engagement, better performance, better results, and greater consistency across their businesses. And that really does make a really positive impact. And along the way, the work that we do with clients has had quite a bit of recognition. So we've had some great awards that we've been put in for and won. And I've also taken the time to really distill what we're doing at a deeper level, and doing that through books. So I've written 3 books. One is a book about sales and influencing, which is for kind of sales teams. The other is a book about consultative selling in kind of dental and medical fields, where I have a lot of clients that I work with. And then the recent book is about leadership and leadership development. And the principles we'll talk about today are really about leadership and leadership development. But all of those areas, there's a real blend across, being able to influence people, engage them, take a consultative approach, and then start to coach and lead. There's a real kind of thread that runs through, I guess, all of those. And I've been privileged to work with some incredible organizations and teams along the way. So I'm going to start with a quick poll, just to understand where you are in your own kind of leadership development, because today really is about leadership. It's just a good way to kind of get your fingers clicking. So let me know on this poll, just have you had structured leadership development before? Either really simple, kind of yes or no, but if there's something else, if like there's if there's something else going on, like you might have tried something but it wasn't as structured, just put that in the comments. But otherwise it's yes you have, or no you haven't. So this is our first poll about leadership development, your experience of leadership development. Okay, Okay, thank you. So the kind of predominant answer is no. So thank you for sharing that. 100%. None of you had structured leadership development. So hopefully some of the things we'll talk about today are really going to be useful for you as foundations for thinking about how you progress into leadership development. And you're not alone in this in your current situation and this situation. It's really interesting. There's lots of research on this. This one by quite a big study by this company, Digits Management Research. They found that in a poll of, I think it was about 10,000 leaders, that 61% of managers receive no training after promotion. So they get promoted and then they just aren't given the tools, the skills, or the structured leadership development. And for the 39% that are given it, only 35% of them get ongoing leadership or management development. So 65% receive no ongoing management training. And we know in our own professions and work that we do how important that leadership development or functional development is. If you are you're in a role in a business, you have to be able to manage yourself, manage the tasks, the skills associated with that role. And it's the same with leadership. So actually starting to work on leadership specifically can be really valuable within our business. So I'll talk you through some of the things that we can help you with in that instance. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is thinking about what does it take for people to perform at a higher level. And there are these three fundamentals that we work on that we found, if you get these in place as building blocks within your teams, really start to change the dynamic of performance. And the first one is about positive psychology. That's about giving people the belief and the confidence that they can do what we need them to do in our businesses. And I've had multiple experiences of this running different businesses where if we have someone that's not performing, not firing, as well as we know they can, what's been interesting for me is that very often, if you think about training and development, you think about skill development, you think about structure and support for that person. I've had situations in multiple businesses where I have people that are underperforming and we think it's a training issue. And actually, very often it's not a training issue, it's an engagement, motivation and confidence issue. And recognizing there's this kind of layer that is psychology and mindset. And are we giving that person, support to really think differently about how they operate and how they think about themselves when they operate? That can be the difference sometimes between performing and not performing. So recognizing the importance of this mindset and psychology can be vital in terms of the difference it makes for the teams that we lead. And then once we start to recognize that opportunity for mindset and psychology development, then we can start to think about skills alongside that. So communication skills, functional skills, practical skills that people need to deliver and perform in their job, but linked to the belief and that outlook that is positive, looks for opportunity, understands that issues and challenges will come up, but that's part of how we grow and develop into our role. That's a mindset shift for a lot of people. And then finally, we think about systemizing it. We'll talk about a couple of tools today and approaches around systemizing what we do in our businesses that really help us to improve performance at a different level. So they're three things. I encourage you to kind of think on this. Let this kind of sink in, that people working around you will need a focus on all three of these areas. They'll need to get the right mindset in place. They'll need to develop the right skills, and they'll need to do the right things in the right order to get that consistency and start to build sustainable growth and development for themselves and for your business. So really important foundations. And we talked about leadership development earlier. I'd love in the chat, if you would, in fact, let me share some of the things that come up regularly, then I'll ask you to share your leadership challenges. But these are the regular things that come up. Team members having kind of negative attitudes, kind of not seeing things positively, focusing on the problems and the challenges, not the opportunity or solutions. A lot of business teams can find issues with kind of gossip and chatter, especially if you're in a leadership position. You don't necessarily get access to it, but it's happening. It can start to undermine some of the great work that you're trying to achieve in building a business. Low enthusiasm. So you won't need telling, right? You'll have lots of enthusiasm about your business, about the plans you've got, the way you're trying to implement change. And sometimes you meet your teams with a lower level of enthusiasm. That's one of the key challenges. Not accepting responsibility. And this is one that I've seen a lot in different teams that I've led and different teams in businesses that I've worked with as clients, where there's always something or someone else to blame when it comes to not being able to make change in the business. And that not accepting responsibility can be a huge hurdle. We have to really work on this. And today we'll talk about how we can start to address these challenges during our session and using some of the tools and the approaches. And then linked to that not accepting responsibility is resistance to change. So that actually resistance to change is very natural. A lot of people, in fact, more people will resist change than will embrace it. And sometimes that will be inherent within us. So recognizing that resistance to change is not only within our team, sometimes that can be within us as well. And we project that without realizing it. And then, of course, creating problems. There's a great quote. I think it's an optimist has, hold on, I'll get it right. An optimist has a solution for every problem. A pessimist has a problem for every solution. And that really does kind of sum up some of our team members. I'm sure you've experienced it. I've had that in the past where you're trying to actually drive through what is positive change for the business. And you could be met by members of your teams who just talk about why things won't work or what the problems are, or, well, if we did that, then this might happen. And sometimes that's useful because it helps you to think about in advance some of the challenges that you need to navigate. As long as people don't ruminate and stick with the problem, then we just need to make sure that people are able to address those problems, not just create and focus on. That's the key. And then, of course, reactive behavior. And this kind of links to our systems piece. Rather than recognizing, we are in a process, we try and do things in the right order, we have a rhythm around what we do. Actually reacting to things as they come up can sometimes create barriers without us even realizing, without the teams even realizing. So trying to get ahead of that reactive behavior through structure systems and giving people a more consistent approach to the way that they're working. So there's a lot of what come up for us in our business. I'd love to hear from you in the chat, if you wouldn't mind. What are some of the challenges you're facing? There might be leadership challenges, there might be business challenges, there might be team challenges. Just, what's the predominant thing that's working for you, or perhaps isn't working for you today? Just in the chat box, which is on the toolbar for those of you who have recently joined us. Just number one leadership challenge that you're facing right now in your business. I'll just give you a moment to type away there. I talked about many there. I think the big one I've seen over the years personally and through the work that I do with clients is that resistance to change, really trying to inspire people to become open to change, especially when you're trying to grow a business, because when you're growing, that requires a shift. Something has to be different, something has to change within your teams. Hanan, good to see you again. Thank you. Accountability and aligning the team. Brilliant. Thank you, Hanan. We'll definitely look at that today. So accountability and aligning the team. Thank you, Samantha. Productivity. That's a good one. Thank you, Samantha. We'll also look at that. There's an really interesting piece of research, Samantha. I don't know if you've seen it by, what's the guy's name? Sean Aker. Sean Aker. I think it was in his book, The Happiness Project. But it basically showed the difference in productivity and effectiveness in the workplace, driven by people's attitudes. And what the research shows, quite an in-depth study, what the research shows is that productivity goes up by as much as 31% when people have a positive response and a positive attitude towards their work versus a negative or neutral attitude. So that's a massive shift. It's almost a third, 31% more productive, just from the way that they view their work, or they perceive their work. So there's something in the mindset piece here, as well as the actual productivity gains that we can get. But we'll have a look at that as well today. Thank you, Samantha. Productivity, accountability, and aligning the team. Feel free, if you haven't had the chance to put your key challenge in the chat, please do, and we'll look as we go through today's session. We'll try and have those in mind so that we can address them as we work through the content from today. But today is all about agreeing standards, boundaries with our teams, because that can very often be the foundation, the framework that enables us to make that shift setting the stage for high performance for our teams. And I love this quote about what we tolerate. As leaders, we have to tolerate a lot within our businesses, but we should examine what we tolerate, because what we put up with, we end up with, and what we allow continues. And so, sometimes that is down to us to kind of reevaluate, actually, should I be tolerating this, and reevaluate your own worth and how you're going to make a change to that situation with your teams. And I've got a couple of things that today I think are really going to help as we consider what can we do about some of those challenges that you're facing in your businesses. So I want to introduce this model to you. And if you've been on a previous webinar with me, you may have seen this, but I'm going to just go through it stage by stage today. It's really important. This is a leadership model for coaching, and it comes from the book, the recent book, Coaching Leaders. I've been using this model probably for coming up for 3 years now, but I only got to the book this year. The book's been kind of 3 years in the making. And it's a really effective coaching leadership model. And if you haven't seen coaching before as a leadership style, we're going to share some things with you today that are going to be really interesting. But coaching is about a way that we lead. It's about switching from micromanagement and over direction to really starting to pivot to questioning, listening, and using questions as a way to ignite and inspire people so that they start to recognize the opportunity for themselves from the inside out. So the ideas come from them, the commitment comes from them, the engagement comes from them, and you don't feel as if you're continually pushing, cajoling, and directing people. And that's when you make that shift, or you can make that shift successfully, it really helps. But it's not just an approach. We talked about psychology, which is changing your mindset around the approach. We talked about skills then, which are about changing, the directive approach to a coaching approach, which is a skill. But then actually thinking about structure. How do we do that? What model do we follow? And this is a really useful model. So I'm going to talk you through it, and then we're going to focus in on this first stage today. But obviously, it's really important that we have a clear plan about where we're going with our business and with our teams. Because by having a clear plan and being able to communicate the direction, this is where we want to get to, it starts to inspire people and helps them recognize that things are changing and the business is changing. They're going to have to change to move with that plan. And I won't go into the plan details today, but we have a really simple structure for formatting and creating this business plan for your business so that you can start to communicate it and follow the direction of the plan. And then once that plan's in place, we start to think about coaching teams. And at the heart of that model, the heart of a kind of coaching relationship is about having trust between you and your team members. Because even when we have the best interests of our teams in place, and we want to do something specifically for them, if they don't trust, if we don't have high trust with them, then they won't take on board our suggestions, they won't take on board coaching. It's not effective if we don't have trust. So people have to have that relationship. They have to trust in what it is we're trying to do together with them. And once trust's in place, then it's about this principle that we're going to dive into today called contracting. And I'll talk a bit more about contracting as we go through this session. So contracting kind of sets the foundation, sets standards and boundaries for our teams. And that's really important. So we get the contract in place. Once that contract's in place, then we can start to talk about objectives and goals. How specifically do our team's objectives and goals meet the business goals? What is it we need them to do to contribute towards the growth of our business? And how do we help them to get really clear on what that looks like? What does high performance for each member of our team look like? If we and they can't define it, then it's really difficult for them to deliver it. So we have to be able to define what high performance looks like. And this is probably one of the areas that gets really easily and often overlooked, because we make the assumption that people are able to operate at the level that we need them to operate at. And often there's a gap between what they think and what we think. And what this second stage does is it closes that gap. This is what we believe is high performance, and the team can then start to share where they are, and we can bridge that gap and come to an agreement around objectives and goals. And then once those objectives and goals are agreed, then we can start to think about, observing our teams, letting them take action, letting them do the job, do the work that we need them to do to grow the business. And then our job is to become an observer. So to start to notice the things that they do and start to notice where they're performing really well and where actually there are gaps. And from that point of observation, we open the window for coaching. And that's when we can coach people to make changes to the way they operate so that we're continually helping them to elevate and improve performance. And without those two stages, that observation and the coaching, we find that people plateau. So performance stagnates, people continue to do what they've always done. So we've really got to lean into this observation and coaching. And then finally, we want to think about, growing the business, growing people's capability, and helping people to think bigger about themselves in the future. So this final stage is what we call heroes in the making. And if you've been in a situation in the past where somebody has, believed in you, has shared with you that they felt you're capable of more, that you have a place that's, greater in that business, it's really motivating and engaging. And sometimes, it's just about helping people see the additional potential that lies within them that they can't often see for themselves. And that really does connect all the dots and help us to set the stage for much higher levels of performance. So that as a plan, as a kind of coaching process can be really powerful. And we run programs that help walk through the model. And of course, we've got the book. So if you want to pick the book up, you can get it on Amazon. You can work through that stage by stage. A really, really valuable model. But as I said, we're going to focus on this contracting stage today. So contracting and agreement, because this really does set the foundations. So what is contracting? So contracting is a principle I learned when I trained as an executive coach. So it's coming up for 6 years this year. I left the corporate world and retrained as an executive coach. And the training was really interesting.
I didn't realise you can't sit in that place.
It was kind of coaching and training through a 6-month program. And one of the starting points for coaching was contracting. And so let me talk you through what it is, because it's something I employ with clients, and it's something that I found really works really well. And I recognized that I did it with certain business teams that I led, and when I had done it, it made such a difference. And when I omitted it, actually I started to notice this issue with standards and boundaries. And so contracting is the answer. So what does it mean? So contracting, I'm just going to animate this slide. So contracting is like a starting point for a strategic conversation with each member of your team. And it is about setting or agreeing expectations and standards. And sometimes this requires us to do some thinking, right? So actually, what are the standards we want to agree and set with our teams? What are those expectations of behavior and attitudes? And really taking time to be clear on that for ourselves, so that when we communicate it and discuss it with our teams, there's clarity for them and clarity for us. We both have something we can buy into. But it's also about thinking about future performance. What are the levels of performance and commitment that we want from our teams? And for us, sometimes, one of the things we will want to do is make our own commitments to our teams through this contracting conversation, and best done in the work that I've done, best done one-to-one with people. But once you've made this commitment, one of the great things to do, and this has been useful personally for me and with clients that I've worked with, is to think about this commitment to address issues. So we talk about standards, we talk about behaviors and boundaries. And actually, as we start to talk about what that means, also to say to people, if in the future I see, I don't know, you're crossing a boundary, or that there are performance challenges, and I think I can help you by addressing them and bringing them to your attention, then my commitment is that I'll do that. And it's a really useful part of a contract with somebody, to make that commitment to address any issues that you see in the future. Because when you do that with somebody, it really does kind of get their engagement, and it also forces your own commitment to do it. And sometimes these things aren't easy. So I remember in one of my early leadership roles, that one of the big challenges I had, how do you have a difficult conversation? And what I learned was that if you make a commitment to people to have a difficult conversation in the future by saying, these situations, I don't find these situations particularly easy, but my commitment to you is that I will have them anyway, even though it's uncomfortable for me. I know it'll be uncomfortable for you. It's equally uncomfortable for me. My commitment is I'll still do it. It's really powerful because actually people's respect for you increases when you agree in advance and then you follow through on that agreement. And it gives you this opportunity to handle difficulties as and when they come up in future. Difficulties that are actually quite often barriers. If you haven't had that contracting conversation, you can find there are small situations with your teams where you think, I really don't like that behavior, but I'm not sure now how to address it. But if you've had this conversation, it opens the door to address those situations. And so that's what it is and kind of the framework. But really what we're doing with this principle of contracting is creating what we call this anchor point. And it's an anchor point for the relationships with our teams from which we can kind of come back to time and again for any kind of conversation that might be performance related, might be behavior associated, it could be actions, it could be attitudinal. But what we do is we create this opportunity for us to start to have this conversation and to be able to revisit it with our teams whenever we feel that's appropriate. And it really does kind of help you to get a sense of control and confidence in those leadership discussions one-to-one with key members of your teams. And I use this example. This is an example from a client that I've worked with, and these are the notes that the client took into the conversation with each member of the team. So the first one was, this is a client of mine who wanted to start to use a coaching leadership style. And when you start to use a coaching leadership style, there's a shift that happens. So if your teams are used to you telling them what to do, and you stop and start asking them questions, they wonder what on earth you're playing at. So if you haven't contracted with them to say, look, I'm going to start to develop my leadership style, I'm going to start to coach rather than direct. And what that means is, in certain situations where you might expect me to tell you what to do, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to trust that you know what to do. I'm going to coach you on it. And that shift, when you signpost it and signal it to people, actually they're very open to it. It takes a couple of attempts to get that right, because people still, even after that conversation, they're still kind of thinking, oh, I thought Justin was going to tell me what to do, and he's not. But it really does start to make that shift. So this is an example of, kind of almost underlying contract. I'm going to stop micromanaging. I'm going to start coaching you. What it means is, you may have to be a bit more open and receptive. You might have to think for yourself a little more, but actually long term, it means it increases your capability and responsibility in the business. Would that be okay? And it's just a kind of first layer of contracting. And then you might talk to your team member about, behaviors and attitudes, and how your desire for them and for all of the team is to have a positive attitude, positive behaviors, because actually everybody thrives in that positive environment. And you can use, the Sean Aker quote that we talked about earlier, or the research earlier, that people who have positive attitudes and behaviors at work are 31% more productive. So actually attitude is such a driver for productivity, and it starts to link, performance with this contracting conversation. You then might start to talk about supportiveness and your desire to support your teams, but you also expect, if you're supporting them, you expect them to be supportive of you, right? This is a fair exchange. If you support each member of your teams and you're proactively supportive of them, there's an expectation and an assumption that support comes back, and it's absolutely right to ask for it. Then there's this piece around challenge. This client wanted to kind of talk about the opportunity to challenge people to improve performance, but also they were open to be challenged back. So, but remembering this is important to do it in a way that is positive. So it's a positive challenge, it's constructive across the whole team. And then the last couple were around, we talked about having difficult conversations. So the commitment to have a difficult conversation, and in that moment, make a decision to move forward and be positive after that difficult conversation for both parties, your team member and for you. So the commitment to say, I'm prepared to have a difficult conversation. When we do that, I'd really like it to be taken positively from both your perspective and mine, so that we can move forward and make the improvements that we need in the business. And then finally, to think about feedback for each other as an opportunity for growth. So giving people feedback, giving and receiving feedback, creating an opportunity for growth for them and for the business. And so you can see, you know, it's really simple. We've got, what, 7 points here. And all of them really start to create this contract and agreement with each member of your team. And you might have a slightly different set of notes for each team member, depending on what you're seeing and what you're looking to achieve or change with them. But that really does help you to start to create this clarity over how you will work together. So I'm just going to give you a moment to think about that. That is one-to-one contracting with different members of your team. Just start to think about what does that mean for you? I'd love to hear in the chat. We're just past the halfway point now. Just in the chat, when you think about what we've discussed so far, what are your key actions? I'd love to hear what you're thinking. I've got something else, a couple of other things that are going to be useful before we close today, but I just want to pause at this moment and give you an opportunity. What key takeaway or key action so far from this session? So just in the chat, when you're ready, type away. Just let us know what you're thinking. Certainly for me, it is, you know, the contracting piece is the number one thing that I do. If anybody, I don't know if anybody on here has had one-to-one with me, but the first thing we talk about in one-to-ones is confidentiality, and is, you know, the contract that we verbally agree around how, you know, what we'll work on, how we work together, what people can expect, and what you can expect from me. So it's really important. It can be really useful in terms of that shift in dynamic with your team members, with people that you're working with, partners. Really useful. Thanks, Hanan. Ensure team members are aware of their responsibilities and feel empowered to make their own decisions. Yeah, really nice. Thank you, Hanan. That's great. And that's so important, because awareness first. Have you and they been clear together on what their responsibilities are? And then do they feel as if they own it and can deliver on it? And those are you're right, they're two things: clarity and capability. Yeah, very good. Thanks, Hanan. And sometimes that might require a number of conversations. It may not just happen in a single, you know, one contracting conversation. Actually, there might be a series of discussions that you're having with your teams to get that clarity. Thank you. Excellent. So drop in if anybody else, as you're thinking about what you're looking to implement following today's session, just drop it into the chat, and we'll. I'd love to hear what you're thinking, and hopefully it's addressing some of those challenges that we talked about earlier, and some of the priorities that you've got coming into this session. So that's at a one-to-one level, and very often you might need some support just to kind of make sure that you and your team are really committed to these contracts. Oh, Samantha, thank you. Samantha, definitely this is a good start for a one-to-one with the team, letting them take direction. Yeah, absolutely. And getting clarity so that you and they understand what that direction is. Yeah, and that's so important, that your understanding and my understanding are the same. There's no longer this disconnect between what you think is great performance and what I believe is great performance. And it may not happen in you know, you might get real clarity in one session, and then you'll find over time it drifts apart again. So you might have to revisit, and you might have to continually revisit, and that's fine. But this gives you that anchor point to keep revisiting too. Thanks, Samantha. That's great. Okay, so that's one-to-one contracting. It can be really powerful as a kind of principle. Let's talk about something else that I've done in almost all businesses that I work in since I learned this principle, and it's what we call team contracting. So as well as the one-to-one contract that we have with each member of our team, actually taking some time to pull together a team contract can be really powerful. And the way that I've done this multiple times in the past for my own business teams, I've also facilitated it for clients as well, is to get the team together at, you know, it might be your next team meeting or your next review as a team, and create some space on the agenda. Normally this takes, you know, an hour to 90 minutes, depending on the size of your team, and just give people some kind of advance warning that we're going to be going through an exercise, an interactive exercise, and we call that the team contract exercise. And so how this works is and this is like the briefing slide. So everyone takes a post-it notepad. So you give everyone a post-it notepad, and they're going to write down answers to the questions on the next slide. Okay, and what they'll do is write one answer per note page on the post-it note. And once they've written one thing down, they take it off and they go to the next page, they write something else down, and they're answering different questions. And they're going to continue answering all the questions until they kind of dry up. And that takes between 5 and 10 minutes, depending on, as I said, the size of your team and the creativity of your team. And my advice is that you do this, you interact and do this with them. So it's not just your team that do it, you do it as well. And there's a reason for that, because you can start to shape it with them. And it becomes an exercise that you are part of, not one that you just kind of facilitated or witnessed. And then once you've got all of those post-it notes, and you'll have lots of different answers, loads of different kind of items and statements, and there might be questions, there'll be all sorts on there, right? Then you stick all of those post-it notes up on a wall or a flip chart, and then you start to cluster the answers into groups that are similar. And then what you'll find is that there is real commonality among the group, and you'll end up with somewhere between 10 and 15 clusters. Okay. And then what you do after that exercise, you just get clarity on each one of the clusters. This is the exercise. So then you get people to talk through it. So as people are going up and bringing their post-it notes, and they say, well, so I might say, I want to be trust might be something. Okay, talk to me about trust. Let people explain what they mean by it. And then someone else might say, oh, I didn't write trust, I wrote honesty, but what I meant was what you've just explained. So then you start to cluster them together. And that conversation is brilliant, because it starts to give everyone clarity over how you'll operate, what's important. You'll hear different people's views, and just through the conversation, you start to get better alignment around what people are trying to achieve. And then once you've gone through that exercise, and I say this takes 60 to 90 minutes, depending on the size of your team, then what you do is write it up in a team contract, and you share it with your team. So you share it maybe at team meetings. You might have it written up and put it somewhere in a prominent area where you're working, maybe in a team room or in a meeting room, or if you've got an open area where your team are, then wherever you can put it, so it becomes a permanent reminder for people. And then, of course, it becomes the commitment you make as a team to each other as you move forward and work together. And here's an example of some of the questions. I won't go through these, but I will let you kind of quickly have a look. How do I want our team to interact with each other? What are my expectations of other people? What can they expect from me? And there's lots of things here, but you can have your own questions. And this is an example set. I'll send you these slides after today's meeting. But you can imagine that you start to get really positive responses from people as they think about and answer these questions, and then hear their colleagues think about and answer these questions as well. And what you end up with, I mean, this is just an example, you end up with a team contract that everybody has participated and contributed towards. And it's really useful. So this is actually a team contract from a business I managed, where our team contract was this all came from the team. I was part of that team, obviously, but I facilitated the exercise. It's about having fun, feeling energized, helping each other, being interactive, being motivated after we had team meetings together, being highly productive. This came from one particular member of the team that wanted to feel like it was a work family, so a work together family, through team spirit, and have a pride in what we were trying to do and outperform competitors and other teams. Then there was something about we want to keep one-to-ones outside of meetings. So when we're meeting together as a team, don't splinter off into one-to-one conversations, keep together as a team, which was quite interesting. Sharing successes, constructively feedbacking and challenging each other to learn from each other, which was brilliant, and that didn't come from me, believe it or not. Encouraging each other, supporting each other, and working in a supportive environment so that it's okay to make mistakes, giving people emotional and business guidance. And what we found, through going through this exercise and revisiting this on a regular basis, it recalibrated people's expectations on a regular basis, just reminded people what they committed to. And what it meant for me as a leader was that if ever I saw people that were acting outside of this team contract, it was no longer my opinion. It was actually really easy to say, hold on a minute, what I'm seeing is this. didn't we agree together in our team contract that what we were going to do was, and I just draw their attention to the component of the team contract that addressed that issue, became a really, really useful way to guide and coach people towards the behaviour standards and boundaries that we'd set and agreed as a team. So you can see this starts to really give you a framework to operate with, one-to-one with teams, and then as a team contract with the group that you're managing and leading. So we covered two really important, really critical principles that if you can adopt these and get these in place, I promise you they'll make a real difference to your teams and your business. It's not a silver bullet, and you can't use it once. You have to use it as an ongoing kind of leadership development tool, team management tool as well. So I'd love to hear your key actions so far. As I say, I'm going to share with you today the slides from this session. I'll also share with you that example team contract. I'll share this with you as well, so you can, if you wanted to pull something together like that, you've got the option to do it. And then I'd love to hear, so where are you right now? I know we've had some one-to-one actions. Where are you with a team kind of contract action? Just drop that in the chat while you're in the background. It takes, I'll be honest with you, it takes a bit of courage to do this, because you as a leader, you're facilitating your team. You have to be open to that feedback. It does. First time I ever did this, I don't mind telling you, I was quite nervous, and I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be. But it wasn't as clean cut. That one I just showed you, that wasn't the first one I did. It wasn't as clean cut as that first time around. But it's amazing what happens when you kind of lean into this, bite the bullet and go for it. I missed a comment earlier actually from Sandeep. Sandeep, great to have you on the call. Thanks for joining us. Sandeep says one-to-one to hold staff accountable and empower them to make decisions. Worry is if they can handle that. Yeah, good question. And that's a great consideration, Sandeep. What if they can't handle that? Well, for me, I think to remember that, if you think about any of us, sometimes we have a situation or a change that's implemented, and it takes us a little bit of time to warm to that change. So recognize that first conversation, if you sense that somebody kind of goes, I'm not sure I can handle this, maybe that's an opportunity to say, well, look, hold on, let's not kind of put a firm line on this today. Let's draw a line in the sand and let's revisit it at our next conversation. Have a think about it. I'll have a think about it, and let's see where can we get to where you feel comfortable with it and I feel comfortable with it. And it's amazing when people are given that shift, and they're like, oh, I'm not sure I can do this, and then they get a bit of space to go, well, look, process it, think about it, reflect on it, come back to me. It's amazing how people, ruminate on stuff, sleep on it, talk to friends, talk to partners. Friend might say, well, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. If you were running a business, isn't that what you'd want? And all of a sudden, people start to move. So they'll just that process of having the conversation, giving people the space to process it and come back to you, that can be really valuable. So hope that helps somebody. But really good action. One-to-ones with each of the staff, accountability, and empowering them to make decisions. But recognise that you've always got that. You're always there to support them if they need you to support. Very good. Loving today's feedback. Thank you. So think about team contract as well, and just drop that into the chat. A couple of other things that I found really useful. I love this saying. If all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail, right? And if you think about the analogy of that in our businesses, if we only know how to kind of direct, push, and cajole people, then that's all we're going to do. And sometimes it requires a different approach. So learning these different leadership skills, coaching skills, starting to set out a vision, start to think about contracting, start to think about how we galvanize engagement and motivation. These are different skills, and we have to start to think of what are the different tools in the toolbox we have to have in order to enable us to use and learn those skills. And I want to share these 10 things that are really useful. Our influence as leaders in our businesses. We think about what do our teams need from us? What is it that engages people to stay and perform at the highest level? And there's 10 items here, right? Employees stay when all of these 10 things are in place. And there's a couple of areas that you might not be able to control. You can't always control how much you pay people because there are limits, right, on how profitable a business is and what salaries you can go to with people. But employees stay when they're promoted. We can't guarantee that we can promote everybody. Otherwise you end up with a business full of managers and nobody to do the work. That's not possible, right? But there are 8 other areas where, if we get them right, employees are completely engaged. And you think about the 80-20 rule, right? So when people are mentored, when they're positively challenged, when they're involved in decisions and involved in making the business a better place to work, when they're trusted, when they're empowered, we talked about empowerment, when they feel like they're making a difference and they're on a mission, when they feel valued because they're told regularly that their work is appreciated and that they're a valuable contributor in the business, when they're appreciated, given thanks and feedback. So there's a lot we can do. 80% of what we can do is down to us as leaders, and it actually isn't linked to payment or promotion. So think about, for those 10 areas, how many can you work on? And how many are you working on? What could you do just to start to improve in all 8 of those areas? And maybe you can affect the last 2, but they're not the primary focus for these exercises. Okay, final takeaways and actions, and then I just wanted to talk you through a couple of other things, and then we will wrap up. So just in the chat while I'm finishing up, just what your final actions from today's session, and then we'll close. I talked you through our leadership model. We also have a sales model that is really useful for communicating, influencing, and selling. So I won't go through this model, but it is in the book Inspire, Influence, Sell, and the Inspire, Consult, Sell books. And the model just helps you start to think about, how do I have a more consultative conversation with customers in our business so that we start to help them make better decisions to work with us, to grow with us. And if you haven't had the chance to read either of those books, or you've got teams that are influencing your customers, patients, clients, then do take a look at them. They really do make a difference. And I'd also like to, you've got actions, had some actions in the chat. Thank you everybody for that. Think about this point around enthusiasm. Now, I like to remind myself of this. We come on sessions like this, we get enthusiastic, and then all of a sudden life gets in the way. So my request of you today is to, from the actions that you've got, schedule some time in the next 2 or 3 days if you can, and work on those actions. So put a plan in place. If it's scheduling some time with your team so that it forces you to have those one-to-ones, it might be that you've got a team meeting coming up. Put an hour on the agenda to run a team contract. Whatever it is, force yourself to commit to it and make that commitment in the next 2 to 3 days. If you can do it in the next 24 hours, even better. But really hold yourself to account, because enthusiasm has a half-life. This time next week, you won't even remember what we talked about. And I'm sad to say that. But if we don't act on this stuff immediately, it loses momentum in our own minds. And it does with our teams as well. So that's my request of you, if you can, just in the next 24 hours to 2-3 days, just put something in your diaries to work on this. And if I'd love to hear, actually, just from today's session, if you have something specific that you're going to take away and do after today, just put, if you can, just put a yes in the meeting chat box. Just put a yes in there if you've got something specific that you're going to take away and do after today's session. Thank you, Samantha. Samantha's a yes, brilliant, thank you. That's great, I'm delighted to hear that, because for me, it's all about implementation and impact. We can have a great session, but I really want you to think there's something specific you can do. Sandeep, thank you. Yes, that's great. Excellent. Okay, and I'd love to hear anybody else that's on there that you can't get to a keyboard. You best just put a Y if you have to. That's really good that we've got some yeses. Thank you. And if anybody is, anybody's kind of got some stuff and thinking, actually, I'd like to go a bit deeper into this, I'd love to invite you to a strategy session. I'm just going to put it in the chat. So let me just do that while you're on the line. If you would like to kind of talk about where this fits specifically for your business, and perhaps there's some, I mean, this is one principle we've talked about. This is our 4th workshop, so we've talked about 4 different principles to now. But this is one principle. If you hit that 45-minute strategy session, you'll see it pops up, and it allows you to look at my diary, so you can see I haven't got anything for the rest of this week, but next Thursday is the first slot. You can see I'm available 9 till 12 next Thursday, and next Friday 9 till 11:45. But if you want to schedule some time, if you want to talk about your business, what you're facing right now, and get some practical hints and tips, and some advice and coaching. So a lot of what I do is coaching, so it's sharing principles like this, and then saying, okay, what is it you can do with that? How does that apply to your business? What impact can that make? And what we do in a strategy session, it's really simple, 3 parts to it. So where are you now? Where would you like to be in 12 months? Maybe you want to think a bit further than that, a couple of years, 3 years out. What are your ambitions? And then part 2, okay, what do you need to do? What development is going to get you there? What do you need to change for you? Because a lot of what we do in our businesses lies with us as leaders, right? That's what's going to make the business get there. The team don't always get there on their own, or I'm not sure they'll ever get there on their own. It's about us as leaders helping them to see that change that's required. And then part 3 is, is there a way that we could help? If you've got, at that point, if you've got the plan, and you're clear on next steps, then you can go for it. But if there's a way we can help with, I'd love to have conversations with you. But for now, if anybody would like a strategy session, just click on the link, get yourself booked into the diary, and I'd love to have a conversation about your business. I love figuring this stuff out. Obviously, I work in my own business, but and I work with a lot of different clients. It's great to kind of have these different challenges and be able to help you navigate them as effectively as possible. So we are at 5:02. I'm just going to open up the chat now for questions. If anybody has a question that we haven't addressed, or something that's on your mind, a leadership priority right now that you'd like a bit of additional advice on, just drop it in the chat, and I will happily share what I can in terms of my knowledge. If I can help, I will. Sometimes it's just good to kind of reflect on it yourself. So if there's anything specific, any questions, anything specific that you're dealing with that you'd like some additional advice on, just drop it in the chat now. I'm going to give you a moment in case anybody's typing away. And otherwise, if you're around next week, so next Thursday, we're running another workshop, so there'll be another opportunity to dive in. But as I say, if you'd like specifically something kind of more tailored or more bespoke, then feel free to jump on a strategy session with me. And if there's any questions now, then feel free to share. I can't see anything in the chat, so I'm going to assume that I've answered everything, that you've got just the right amount of information from today's session. I will send you, as a follow-up from today, the slides from our session, the team contract example, and the recording of this session. So if there's anybody in your business or your network that you think I should share this with them, it'd be really valuable, feel free to do that. Feel free to share it with people that you think will get value from it as well. Okay, I'm going to assume there's no more questions. Silence is consensus. I'm going to say thank you, everybody, for giving up your Thursday lunchtime. I really appreciate it. Samantha, thank you for joining us and for your interaction. I really appreciate it. And have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a wonderful weekend. And hopefully I will catch you all on a future session, or on a strategy session if you'd like to join me. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Pleasure. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, everybody. Take care. See you soon. Thanks, everyone.